Hey everyone, back again for another video. In today's video, we are going to begin building the exhaust for the Del Sol. So I have the materials laid out on the ground here. We have a UJ bend, part of a UJ bend. We have a 2.5-inch flex bellow. We have two V-band assemblies, and we also have a section of 2.5-inch straight tubing. So what we're working with is we need to get from the turbine outlet here where my middle finger is through this pocket right here between the manifold, the compressor, and the radiator fan down underneath of the car and run the exhaust back towards the rear, made up to the existing exhaust on the car, so on and so forth. So obviously the first order of business is to get the exhaust from turbo over to this area where I can determine the angles that are necessary to get the exhaust downward and run it where we need to. So I eyeballed a little bit. I think it comes out of the turbine with a straight section. So I'm going to take the already cut UJ, make a couple of additional cuts on it, and see roughly where we're at and where we need to go from here. So in looking around at this, I believe this 45-degree bend and this 90-degree bend will be our tickets to getting the exhaust past the manifold. If we go 45 out of the turbine outlet, 90 down here, it will snake us back towards the center of the vehicle where Honda's, and I believe this one should be the same way. Double check. Yes, same way. They have a pocket in the oil pan that is for where the exhaust runs back towards the rear of the vehicle. So the exhaust comes over here, snakes back around towards the center. We will be roughly lined up where we need to be to run the exhaust to the rear of the car. So I'll go ahead, I will prep this 45, get it positioned appropriately on the flange, and at that point in time, we can weld that section, we can plane this flange, and then we can get the 90 fit on and keep moving from there. I wanted to interrupt and make a quick note about the way that I just welded that flange. I used a method different than what I normally use, but it is a very valid old school method for welding tube to flanges. So if you look at the weld on the turbine outlet flange here, you can see that it has a little bit different aesthetic than a normal stainless weld. And the reason for this is I used a different rod for it. I used what's called silicon bronze, and it's more of a brazing rod as opposed to a welding rod. So what you do when you're welding a piece of tube to a flange with silicon bronze, you weld the outside with silicon bronze, you weld the inside with stainless, and what this does for you is it provides a joint that is a little bit more flexible than if you were to weld with stainless rod on the outside without the possibility or a lesser possibility of it breaking due to that flexing and movement. So a lot of old school header manufacturers, such as Nelson Racing Engines, they use this process very frequently on their turbo systems, and it's a tried and true old school method, as I said. So I wanted to try it out on this, and it should work out quite nicely. So now we need to take our 90-degree bend and route this down underneath of the car. So I'll have to get the front of the car up in the air so I can more easily see underneath and see what's going on, where the tube needs to lie. So let me get this up on my race ramps and we can move forward from there. Alright, we have the downpipe fabricated for the Honda here. So I had to build this a little bit differently than a normal style Honda downpipe, both due to the confines in this area right here and trying to make it match up to where it needs to with that pocket for the exhaust right there. So you can see in the corner of the frame and now in the center of the frame where the downpipe ends up at. It's P-banded there. This way it's still able to be installed and removed from the top of the car, and it gives me a nice angle that I can run the exhaust right down that channel where it needs to. So now I can go ahead, pull it off at a verified fitment, do these 3 welds, and that leaves the only weld left on the downpipe to be the O2 bung. So I'll pull it off, get it melted together, and this will be one more thing knocked out on this project. Alright, after that bit of welding, we have the downpipe finished for the Del Sol. So let's take a look at it. So, as we had before, snakes around down through here. It's pretty much the same thing, just with a little bit of color in it now. And I still have to put the O2 bung in, but I'm going to wait to do that for a little bit. And like we said down here, I have a nice location for that outlet to allow me to run the exhaust right down that channel and to tie it into the rest of the exhaust. So that's going to be it for today. I will come back in tomorrow and we can take the downpipe and build the tube that connects the downpipe to the rest of the exhaust. So see you guys then. We are back for day 2 of building the exhaust for the Del Sol. So yesterday we went ahead and built the downpipe for it. And the only thing left to do on the downpipe is to put the O2 bung in. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now, so that way this whole upper section of the exhaust is complete. I don't have to pull it back off. It'll be squared away. So I'll get a bung, I'll get my Mach sensor, figure out a location for it, get that marked out, hole punched, welded in, yada yada. So let's get to that, and then we can start with the rest of the system. So, as you just saw, I went ahead and I converted the existing exhaust on the car to a V-band as opposed to a 2-bolt flange that was on it before. So, with that being completed, I can now go ahead and build the linking piece, or I guess the mid-pipe, between the downpipe and the rest of the exhaust system. So, I have some bend angle left over. I have 180 degrees there. Oh, and 20-something degrees there. And I have my section of straight tubing. So that should be more than enough to reach from the downpipe to the exhaust on the car. So now I can go ahead, get that knocked out, or at least start building it and figuring out the angles necessary. And before long, we'll have a full exhaust on this car. We are making awesome progress on the exhaust for the Del Sol, but there is one little tech tip I wanted to let you guys in on. Well, I still can. So, on any flex section like this, you may be able to see that there's multiple layers right here. So, when you are welding this, rather than trying to weld it with the multiple layers and trying to do your lap weld that way, I like to come in and fuse the multiple layers together to make essentially one layer, and makes the weld a little bit more controllable and a little bit easier to have good aesthetics as you are welding a piece like this. So I'm going to go ahead and fuse that together. Then I can go underneath. I can mark out where piece number 1 and piece number 2, which has a little bit of an angle to it, where those match up coming off of the downpipe. And then we are one long straight section away from having the exhaust completed. So let's get the rest of this knocked out. After a long, hot, dirty day's worth of work, we have the exhaust built and up underneath of the Del Sol. So you guys just saw me install it, and there's the clearance that we're dealing with. Tucks up nicely in that channel, runs back to the rest of the exhaust, and very happy with how that fits. So exhausts are probably my least favorite part to build for a car. It's just a massive cumbersome piece that you're building, and they're not any fun. But it's done, checked off the list, and I guess the only thing left to do on it, if I see a need for it to have one, would be an auxiliary brace right around that flex bellow, so that way with the exhaust moving it doesn't end up breaking the bellow. But other than that, the exhaust is connected from the front of the car all the way to the rear of the car. So pretty happy that that is now checked off of the list. So I think that's probably going to wrap it up for this video, and we'll have more coming on this car in the not too distant future. But until then, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and we'll see you then.